So yeah, my folks were originally from Victoria, and they got married, and Dad got a job transfer to Tasmania, so all us kids were born down there, and I grew up hearing stories of other places. It was a wonderful place to grow up, and the Tasmanian Art School was really vibrant. So I entered when it was the Tasmanian School of Art, and it was one of the first art schools to be taken over by the university system. So I exited as a university graduate, and I majored in sculpture and painting.
And then almost immediately, you pack up your swag and you're hitchhiking up to Maningrida in the Northern Territory, and that's when things just start happening for you immediately. How soon after arriving did you actually meet Helen Djimbawala Williams?
Okay, Helen and I met probably after 3 or 4 months, I guess. It was very vivid and thick and hectic times. I almost think that it was 5 or 6 years packed into a year.
So you meet Helen, and from that relationship, you have, 3 of your 5 fantastic daughters.
Yeah.
Over time, you start travelling between the Northern Territory and Brisbane. It's in the sort of mid-80s, isn't it? Around about 85, 86, somewhere around there.
Yeah, well, then I had to make some decisions about where I was living, and I was yearning to be setting myself up in a studio practice. I'd had lots of ideas accumulating in my little journals, but nowhere to actually explore them. Brisbane quickly became a halfway house between the south and the north. And I guess a lot of my work then became about those polarities, those distances between the opposites of south and north and black and white, and trying to find some meaning in kind of the chaos. The Aboriginal people, the Gunabidji people, and all the people in Arnhem Land were very proud people, and I wasn't unproud of myself or my family or my culture and my heritage. So I became demonstrably interested in showing that, and I think that was where as an artist, I tried to define myself.
So you met David Paulson and Phil Gordon earlier in Tasmania. Then in the mid-80s, you're coming down to Brisbane, and you set up your first studio in the Wool stores down in Tenerife.
Yeah.
With them?
Yeah.
Or with their help? Or
No, we were all there together.
But you're working with, in the 80s, and correct me if I'm wrong, found objects and doing assemblage works?
Yeah, I continued the sort of work I was doing at art school around the Tenerife studios, which was largely assemblage and using found objects, which was as a result of my situation.
And then in 89, you won a couple of different art prizes.
Yeah.
Churchy and the Suncorp, I think. And then you start showing with Peter Bellis. Did your relationship with Bellis come as a result of your winning those prizes, or was he exposed to your work through Museum of Contemporary Art?
Yeah, I think I was wandering around and visiting all the local galleries, Ray Hughes, Michael Milburn, Peter Bellis, Ros McCallan. I was presenting myself as a young artist, and I was letting people know that I was interested in art and I was making it, and if anyone wanted to have a look, they could. I had a studio down in Tenerife. Peter was a wonderful support in those days, and he was very mindful of the Aboriginal exposure and the experiences and how I was distilling it and how I was explaining it. But I think he was much more interested in two-dimensional work, so he was pushing me more to the painting. And I understood that as a commercial imperative, I guess. I was very happy to take my work into the commercial world because that's how I saw myself surviving. Yeah. And I would take any advice,
of course,
that I could.
You're incredibly collaborative. So you've worked with Clifford Possum, Lynn Onus with the X and Ray series, and of course with Michael Nelson Jagamara. How did that all come about? Is that just a natural progression from when you had artists drifting in and out of Torrington Street, or?
The collaborative works really began by just trying to be trying to learn from each other. And I mean, some of them are very sort of 2D, you do this bit, I do that bit, but others became a little bit about a process that everyone walked away knowing more than they did when they started.
Because a lot of your career, really, you oscillate between European and Indigenous, artist dealer, father, family man, and an individual, outsider, insider. How do you negotiate that? How do you negotiate those layers?
I think I invested a lot of thought and meaning into the imagery that I was making. And that probably came largely amplified by not making work for a while, living in Maningrida, and just being around as a layman in a culture where all the stories and all the imagery was very abstract. So I kind of figured that the story was something else, invisible, something intangible, but it held more meaning than often what we were looking at in the present. So a lot of my work has been held within that, and that gave me confidence, Bruce, to the answer. So I could
navigate with confidence.
Yeah, it was my wayfinder.